Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With my scribbling, I don't wonder why you had a problem knowing who was going to speak first. For the record, my name is Steve Shurtleff, and I represent Merrimack District 15, which is Ward 1 of Concord, the village of Pennacook. And I'm here this morning, Mr. Chairman, to introduce to the committee House Bill 32. Let me just say, as the former chair of this committee, it's nice to come home again. And I can honestly say my two happiest years in the House were on this committee.
And the committee welcomes you back. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. Mr. Chairman, in 1990, the federal government passed the gun-free school zone bill, and it was the assumption of law enforcement in local school districts that that bill would cover them in New Hampshire. And a few years ago, before then Attorney General Gordon McDonald was elevated to Chief Justice, he issued an opinion to local law enforcement that said, no, you cannot really enforce the federal gun-free school zone bill. That has to be done by federal agents. And so for the past 3 years, we've been somewhat in a gray area as to what to do. The bill I'm proposing today would be the New Hampshire's version of gun-free school zone. And let me just say, Mr. Chairman, I speak today as someone who is not anti-gun. Believe it or not, I've been a licensed hunter in New Hampshire for 60 years now. Yeah, I'm really that old. And all during my working career, I carried a firearm. 3 years in the military, a year in Vietnam as a Concord police officer, then 26 years with the U.S. Marshals. I was a past member of the Alderbrook Sportsman's Club. So this isn't any anti-gun legislation. The purpose of this is to keep guns out of school that shouldn't be there. I tried in developing this bill, take into mind the fact that when I was in high school, I used to go deer hunting after school, and you bring your gun to school and you go hunt. This bill allows for people to bring a vehicle on the school grounds with a weapon in it. It's just got to be secured. The same as someone visiting the office. They can have their gun secured in their vehicle and they're fine. I tried to put the penalties as minimum as I could. First offense is a B misdemeanor. Second offense is an A misdemeanor. And then if you're the third time, you obviously don't understand, then it elevates to a felony. I introduced this bill because I've got 2 kids and grandchildren in school. My 17-year-old daughter is in high school, and my 12-year-old grandson is in middle school. I can't understand why any responsible gun owner and concern to any student that sees them thinking, is this going to be the day that I die because of the national violence we've all seen? So, Mr. Chairman, I know you've got a lot of work today. I'm going to end there. I hope the committee will support this bill, and I'd be very glad to answer any questions I can.
Representative Mannion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for taking my question. I don't see any time restraints on this, so if it's 2 in the morning and you're driving within 1,000 feet of a school zone, this applies to you as well?
If you're driving through a school zone?
Yeah, does this apply to you as well within 1,000 feet of a school at, say, 2 in the morning? I don't see anything in here that allows it, that restricts it only during school hours.
Exactly. I think a lot of times school activities can go for great periods of time, from high school proms to dances to basketball games, things of that nature. If you're driving past the school, you're fine. It's when you're stopping at the school and you're going to go, you're on actual school property that the law would take effect, that you've got to secure your weapon.
Follow-up?
One follow-up.
Am I understanding it wrong? It says within 1,000 feet of a school, so that would mean beyond the school's actual physical property?
If you are in a field or, well, the bill makes an exemption, for example, a local homeowner or somebody traveling through, going from point A to point B, driving by the school. It's when you're stopped and parked down the street, and we've seen that. Sadly, we saw that in Texas recently, where the perpetrator parked probably a quarter of a mile away and then walked to the school with his long gun. That's when the law would take effect. But if you're going from point A to point B, or if you're a homeowner or a business, then you'd be exempt from this law.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you for introducing the bill this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
At this point, the chair recognizes Tom Mannion. Mr. Tom Mannion. Thank you, Representative.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Tom Mannion. I represent Hillsborough 1, Pelham. I'm here to testify in opposition to HB32. This is a common expression I use when discussing why I carry. When seconds count, the police are only minutes away. This bill prohibits the type of personal rapid response in a crisis situation anywhere near a school. It creates a publicly advertised soft target. In other states with similar provisions, this is the exact type of area where mass shooting events occur, places where there is the least amount of resistance from law-abiding citizens that obey these ordinances. The bill shifts the responsibility of defense of life entirely onto law enforcement. And while it's more comfortable to think that the Uvalde Police Department is the only department that would wait outside the school for hours and tase you if you try to enter to do their job for them, I'm not confident that would be the case. You see, courts at all levels have repeatedly affirmed that law enforcement are under no obligation to risk their lives to save yours or the lives of your loved ones. I know the reaction to mass shooting events is to do something, and I agree, but this is not the right something to do. The solution to this problem is not to prevent teachers, janitors, counselors, or parents from on-site from being the first responder in a crisis situation. Frankly, I'm of the opinion that more teachers should take firearm training and carry. To me, it is akin to any other emergency situation, learning the Heimlich maneuver, CPR, automatic defibrillator usage, what to do in case of a fire, etc. I don't believe in mandating carry, but administrations being more encouraging for it and including training courses for those that are interested would be nothing but beneficial. With that, I ask you to ITL HB32, and I'm willing to take any of your questions.
Thank you for your testimony this morning. At this point, the chair recognizes who's on it. Mr. Andrew Schiller. And just for anyone wishing to testify, if you have a pink card, please turn it in now, not hold it to the end. At this point, I'm not going to limit testimony, but if it gets too much, I'm going to have to put a time cap on them so that we can all get out of here before the sun goes down, hopefully. So if you have a card, please bring it forward, and you may commence. Thank you.
I just want to quickly testify that firearms are a source of protection for kids that are in schools. It's not something kids to be afraid of, and possession of firearms should be fully legal on campus. Another thought, I don't know if you heard about some of the news of teachers doing adult content on school campuses. This is a deterrent for that kind of behavior, and also a source of help in case there is some sort of dirty behavior going on in schools. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your testimony. The chair calls William, last name starts with an R, the rest I can't decipher. Sir, push the button. And if you could say your name for the record.
William Rogers.
Thank you.
Winchester, New Hampshire. I'll tell the sponsor why I would carry a gun in a safe school zone. If I was going for my grandson or my granddaughter, I'd want to protect them because it's well documented that quote-unquote safe zones, gun-free zones, are targets for criminals because there's no guns there and they can do what they want. That is why I would carry a pistol to pick up my granddaughter or my son or my grandson or any of them. That's why. To me, a firearm is just a tool for protection. It's also a tool of enjoyment for marksmanship and hunting, but in that case, it's for protection. That is why I oppose this bill. Thank you for your time. Also, thank you for everything you do. It's the second day I've been to these meetings. You guys are like saints. I don't know how you do it, listen to the stuff all day long, but thank you.
I think my third grade nun would disagree, but thank you anyway. At this point, the chair recognizes Mr. Brian Blackton.
I ask ITL this bill. Does this bill indemnify a person who has a legal right to be in proximity to a school who may be a witness to an active shooter and take appropriate action with his or her legal firearm to neutralize said shooter in order to save lives? Or are they merely supposed to call 911 and watch as carnage unfolds and do nothing? Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. At this point, the chair calls Mr. Skip Bernian.
For the record, I'm Skip
Frederick Berrien from Exeter, New Hampshire, former member of the House, Vice Chair of the Children's and Family Law Committee.
Allow me to correct it then, the Honorable Mr. Frederick Berrien.
Thank you. I'm I'm a retired pediatrician. 8 years ago, I testified before the Commerce and Consumer Affairs Committee in the shadow of the massacre of 20 children in Newtown, Connecticut. Nicole Hockley, mother of Dylan Hockley, was one of the 6 children who was murdered in 2012. She appeared here before this committee on that day, asking this state to take action to prevent a similar episode from occurring in New Hampshire. The killer in the Newtown massacre was born in Exeter and spent part of his childhood here in New Hampshire. Sandy Hook could have been Main Street School in Exeter or any elementary school here in New Hampshire. Now, 8 years later, what have we done to reduce the risk of this kind of school massacre? I say nothing. Instead, the legislature has voted to prohibit enforcement of federal protections in the case of firearms threats in New Hampshire schools. Our children are educated in fortress-like structures where children practice hiding from armed intruders. With the continuation of school shootings, no wonder our children are experiencing more angst and mental health deterioration. HB32 is one of many necessary steps to acknowledge that there are millions of guns in this state, some of which can get into the wrong hands, and create mayhem in our schools. HB32 provides a modicum of protection for our children and may provide our children with reassurance that we are looking out for them. HB 32 does not restrict anyone's guns rights or except on school premises where they cannot possess a gun. I urgently urge you to vote OTP on HB 32. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. This time the chair calls the Honorable John Burt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and fine committee members. I am former Representative John Burt. I served 12 years in this House, and I'm taking a small break. Mr. Chairman, I would guess you would know I'm opposed to this bill. This bill is not needed. I've had dozens and dozens and dozens of teachers call me when this bill was before us when I was serving as a state representative, and they also opposed this bill because bottom line, we have teachers carrying in this state. New Hampshire has never had a school shooting, and there's a reason. Because the nuts out there understand that our teachers are carrying guns. Also, that the citizens are carrying guns in our schools. So I hope that this bill will be ITL'd. Mr. Chairman, let me tell you about Parkland, Florida. There was a school shooting down there, pretty bad one. It was a gun-free zone. Mr. Chairman, guess what it is today? It's not a gun-free zone. They've armed the teachers because they said they don't ever want to see what happened that dark day. The teachers in Parkland, Florida are currently carrying guns. It is the only way to protect our children. Because as Parkland, Florida and that school in Texas showed us, the police do not have to go in and protect the children. They can hide outside and beat up on the parents that are trying to get in to protect their children. So I don't understand how anybody could vote for this, knowing those two schools had police officers, Parkland, Florida, they hid outside. The Uvalde, Texas, they were pushing the parents back not to go in there to protect their children as children were being shot. New Hampshire has never had a school shooting, and I believe, again, it is because our teachers and our citizens carry guns in our schools. We've never had a problem, so I don't know why this bill is needed. But as I said before, Mr. Chairman, on the House floor, as a state representative, that I served proudly for 12 years to fight these bills, what I said is if this bill passed, there will be a school shooting in New Hampshire. And there'll be dead children and dead teachers. And the blood of those dead children and dead teachers will be on the hands of whoever votes for this. So I hope that every one of you understands that we don't have a problem in New Hampshire. We're one of the safest states in the country. So I ask you to ITL this and ITL it fast. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. This time the chair calls the Honorable Maria Perez.
Good morning, members of the committee and everyone in the public. Thank you for taking the time and coming to testify on this bill. I'm here in support of this bill. Let me tell you why. I'm going to give you a little bit of background. I grew up in El Salvador. Before I moved here, I used to hide underneath my bed. We used to go to school with white towels, anything white, just to try to protect our life. Guns, violence, that was everywhere. When I was 6 years old and my sister was 7 years old, we went to our school. We found our principal of our school killed in the girls' bathroom. That was the worst traumatized thing that I ever seen in my life. We found a body and blood everywhere on the floor. I don't wish any kid to go through what we went through. We don't need guns in the schools or around schools. I can tell you that guns in the school is not going to make us safer. Guns around school is going to make us scared. And for a lot of us who've been traumatized with things like this, it's going to open scars. I'm not here to take away anyone's right to have a gun. That's not what I wanted to do. But I just want a safer and a better environment for the children and for everyone who have been through the things that my sister and I went through. I wish my sister was alive so she can be here to testify like myself, but she's not. She passed away 13 years ago. All the scars and traumatized that she went through because of the gun violence. She passed away not the way that I wish I can tell you that she did, but she started using drugs, and then she died from HIV. A gun violence, it was a scar that she had all her life until she passed away. So I asked the committee to support this bill for people like my sister, that she's no longer here, she doesn't have a voice anymore. And for many of us, that we still walking around with the scars. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony. The chair recognizes Representative J.R. Hole.
Good morning, members of the committee. Someone on the way up said it's difficult to hear who's running the sound system. So for those speaking, yell into the microphone, I guess. I'm here in opposition to this bill for multiple reasons. One of which is it will not address a criminal who's intent on doing harm. At the end of the day, adding additional prohibitions on law-abiding citizens will only increase the risk of an incident in New Hampshire schools. I think everybody in this room has a common goal of making sure our children are safe, but this is the wrong way to go about it. First and foremost, whether the instructor in the classroom wants this role or not, they are the only adult in the room, and if there's a problem, they will be, because of proximity, the first responder to any incident. I had a conversation several years ago outside of this hall with someone who was vehemently anti-gun. And we had a discussion about whether teachers should be carrying mace. should be carrying pepper spray. And the reason we had that discussion, and the person agreed that was an appropriate solution, because we both realized that the first responder in all situations is the adult in the room when you have children. This bill, as filed, will make our schools more dangerous or less safe, depends how you want to say it. I would ask that you would IPL this bill. There's no reason for it. Our schools are safe. There are faculty and staff members who do carry. Okay, there are people ready and willing to respond who live adjacent to schools, and this bill is unnecessary. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. The chair recognizes Leonard Coro, Dr. Leonard Coro. Yeah.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your work in trying to enhance public safety in our state. This bill is a bill to try to make schools safe. Our teachers and our students and administrators and other people in schools are really frightened and anxious. Kids are anxious. I'm a psychiatrist. We see this so often these days. And this is a bill to keep guns out of schools so we don't have accidents and we can begin to make our schools as safe as they can be. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. The chair recognizes Mr. Timothy Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just like to voice my opposition to this proposal. I certainly understand the intent, and I think we all agree we want to make schools safer. I think our minds automatically go to Columbine areas, mass shootings like that. I think the thing that I disagree with this is the fact that we are asking law-abiding citizens to do something, not carry a gun in school, which we won't if this is passed. But if I was a criminal and I woke up in the morning and decided that I was going to inflict harm in a school, I would have no regard for this. So I really do not see, I understand the intent, but I think I do not feel as though this is, if we really ask ourselves, if we pass this law today, tomorrow, is it going to have a real impact? Is this something that our children are going to be safer? When my son is in school, is he less likely to be in harm's way if this is passed? And I have to honestly say, I don't believe he will be safer. I actually genuinely feel he will be less safe, because I think in the instance of people who are doing this type of heinous crime, they have no regard for the law. And I know that their mindset is they want to do something, go down in their last blaze of glory. And I think the immeasurable thing with firearm ownership and people having firearms is you don't know who has a firearm. And if there's the thought, it doesn't have to be a firearm there, but just the very thought of there being a firearm is enough to discourage somebody from going in there, because you're gonna mess up their master plan. And they traditionally, people have gone past gun-free zones, like in Aurora, Colorado. They went past 2 movie theaters to go to the movie theater that had the no gun sign over it. In Amherst, New Hampshire, we had a gun-free zone probably 20, 30 years ago. It was a big community got together and they said, we're a gun-free neighborhood. They started getting broken into left, right, front, center. And when they took that sign down, the break-in stopped. I won't belabor the point, but I just don't, I feel basically we would be losing. I would rather have somebody trying to protect my child. I know there's always, anytime firearms involved in defense, there's always, somebody could get hurt, that you don't intend to. But I would rather that than allow evil to prevail. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. The chair recognizes Dr. Johann.
Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Joe Hannon. I'm the Vice President for Gun Owners of New Hampshire, and I'm speaking in opposition to this bill. This bill does one thing. It makes criminals out of people who are not criminals, law-abiding citizens. Someone intent on harming someone or committing a heinous crime is not going to be deterred by a sign or a lesser charge of a misdemeanor or even a Class B felony. If someone is going to do that, they're going to do it. There's not a lot else to say other than this is going to hurt people who could possibly defend themselves in a situation where their life may depend on having a firearm with them. Years ago, when there was the shooting in Connecticut, I was actually in my son's school teaching a few kids, volunteering, and I went home, saw the news. I heard the news there. I went home. The next week, I went back, and they gave me a school safety briefing on what to do if there's a shooting. And since I wasn't an employee, I was just a volunteer. I didn't have a key to the room to lock the door. So they said I couldn't lock the door, but they covered the windows with paper and told us to just line all the kids up against the wall so they can't see who's in the room. That was our self-defense plan. It was ridiculous. For one, there were windows. We could have easily gotten out and gone into the woods. But the bottom line is we're making basically fish in a barrel with this kind of policy. And as a member who was on the school safety task force back in 2018, one of the people that was there to help with some of the policies and recommendations, there were a lot of recommendations, and this was not, I believe, one of them. So please, ITL this bill, and that's all that needs to be said. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. The chair calls Mr. John Bunker.
Mr. Chairman, I have testimony. Mr. Chairman and committee members, I'm John Bunker. I reside in Stratton, New Hampshire, and I'm here today to support Bill 78, 32, and 106. I have submitted written testimony, and I'm here to tell you why I'm here today. Last year, on April 26th, I was driving back from Maine on a fishing trip without access to Wi-Fi or radio or cell service, and I heard about the Uvalde shootings. That news report left me angry, scared, and motivated. Angry that we as a nation have failed to successfully address the public health epidemic of gun violence. Scared that my 3-year-old granddaughter will soon be in a classroom. And motivated to become engaged in my community and my state. That's why I'm here. I grew up in Concord. I hunted and fished with my dad and my grandfather. I taught riflery and gun safety. I am also a parent, a grandparent, and a gun owner and a public health professional. I come to gun violence issue with respect to the vast majority of gun owners in this country who are responsible, safe, and law-abiding members of their communities. I've enjoyed a 30-year career in public health and healthcare. I hold master's and doctoral degrees from the Johns Hopkins University of Public Health. I have done international and national healthcare consulting for private sector, public sector, and nonprofit sector clients. I served for over a decade as the founding president of New Futures, an advocacy organization established by the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation to reduce substance use disorders in New Hampshire. After New Futures, I served as an associate dean and the director of external relations in the College of Health and Services at UNH. I also serve on several nonprofit boards, including Goodwill of Northern New England, and I was a former board member of NAMI New Hampshire, the National Alliance of Neurologists. After extensive study and research on the epidemic of gun violence in our country, today I have strong support for this bill. This bill clarifies that possession of a discharge of a firearm in a safe school zone is illegal and adds criminal penalties if this law is violated. I have several other remarks, but for the sake of time, I will pass on those. Finally, I want to share a quote from a recent editorial that resonated with me. The latest shootings were tragically, infuriatingly predictable. So let's ask politicians not just for lower flags and moving speeches, but also for a better way to honor the dead, an evidence-based slog that saves life. In the handout that I have for you, the testimony, I've left you with 3 references that I hope might be helpful for you as you deliberate your vote. The first is from the RAND Corporation. It's on the science of gun violence. It's 486 pages, but there's a fair amount of information that might be relevant to this conversation. I've also given you the link to the Johns Hopkins Gun Violence and Prevention Policy Institute as well. And there's a terrific article that's sponsored by the Journal of American Medicine that also has information that you might find helpful. Thank you for the opportunity to present my testimony today.
Thank you for your testimony. The chair calls J.E. Simkin, and I would ask anyone who is coming to testify, please make sure you speak into the mic. The acoustics in this room are designed to go that way, not this way, so if you could speak right into it, it would be very helpful.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to testify. I do have prepared testimony, which I'll hand in. It covers several bills. I figured it was more tree efficient and less burdensome to you to have short comments on each bill, but there are obviously bill-specific comments.
Your testimony that you're handing in is good for all the bills, but if you could limit your testimony now to just the bill in front of us.
I thought it was a little, again, more efficient. I'd like to hand this in, if I may, so that the members can look at a table, of data. I don't think anyone else will present these data to you. On the third page of my testimony is a table of data drawn from the FBI's uniform crime reports. These data, which cover 20 years from 2001 through 2020, show the incidence of violent crime per 100,000 residents for the New England states. A time series this long, and as I'll point out, so consistent, likely is fairly representative of reality. Sometimes data series bounce around a lot. For example, gains or losses in jobs varies widely from month to month. These data, annual, are very consistent. They show that over this 20-year period, the incidence of violent crime in New Hampshire, with a one-year exception, has been among the 3 lowest incidences nationwide. We live in a very, very safe state. Second, if you look at the line of data for Massachusetts, it shows that the incidence of violent crime in Massachusetts throughout this 20-year period has been at least twice that of New Hampshire. I point out, for the benefit of those who may not be familiar with Massachusetts laws as to firearms, they are voluminous. I deem them nasty and repressive. So over 20 years, if gun control laws were beneficial, one would have thought that would be obvious in Massachusetts, because periodically they add to the volume of their laws. It's brought down the level of violence there, but it's still twice that of New Hampshire. Now, to the specifics of House Bill 32 FM. It is so vaguely drawn that a purpose of it, stated or not, must be to ensnare those who are unaware. In a small town, a gun-free school zone could cover the entire town. So I have visions of towns being fenced off, as East Berlin was from West Berlin in the bad old days. You are leaving New Hampshire, you are entering a prohibited area. Okay, if we're going to do that, that gives a person notice I'm carrying, I have to do a U-turn and go around this town. The practical impact of this is that law-abiding folks who have no ill intent are going to be ensnared. I don't know, and I'm not asking now because it wouldn't be proper, how many members of the committee have actually litigated against a state. I've done so twice. I hold in my hand a Massachusetts temporary non-resident license to carry firearms. It was wrongfully revoked. It was restored to me by order of the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts. That process took 3.5 years, and even with me doing most of the law research and drafting pleadings for my attorney's review and signature, cost about $125,000. The data in the fiscal note attached to this bill come from some other galaxy. It's the only way I can describe them. The
there's some imaginary rate that attorneys are deemed to charge. It doesn't correspond to the facts. So that most folks charged under this bill, should you decide to enact it, are either going to be bankrupted or they'll take a plea because they can't afford to fight it. That kind of law should not be enacted, not only not here, members of the committee and Mr. Chairman, shouldn't be enacted anywhere. It's a trap. It's going to cause folks to acquire criminal records who didn't have any criminal record, and the consequences of that, even if they fight it, and even if they succeed, could well be job loss, family problems because of the financial strain, and reputational damage. Those who propound this kind of measure may have noble intent. The road to hell is paved with noble intentions. In conclusion, and I'll be happy to take any questions you may have for me, please do not enact this bill or any similar.
Thank you for your testimony this morning.
Thank you.
The chair calls Kimberly Morin.
I'm short, so this is easy for me. My name is Kimberly Morin. I'm here representing the Women's Defense League of New Hampshire. We are a grassroots, all-volunteer, woman-run organization who teaches women in New Hampshire and the states surrounding how to safely and accurately shoot firearms. This bill does nothing to stop criminals from going onto school grounds with firearms. Nothing. It's already illegal to go on school grounds with a firearm unless you have a pistol revolver license. That's federal law. What this bill does do is stop law-abiding citizens from protecting themselves and children from criminals intent on doing harm. It also makes women who have either left abusive relationships or have stalkers unable to protect themselves for the mere act of dropping their kids off at school. The mom who fled to a new city and has to walk her kids to school, but is always looking over her shoulder for her abuser or her stalker, will be further victimized by this legislation if it were to pass. This legislation is written by an out-of-state organization, not all of these gun control bills are, and it seeks to solve a problem that doesn't exist in New Hampshire. And again, this bill will not stop criminals from bringing firearms onto school grounds. In fact, criminals seek out gun-free zones because they know their victims will be unable to protect themselves. Please vote inexpedient to legislate on this bill. All it does is make Granite Staters, especially women and children, less safe. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Please refrain from clapping. The chair recognizes Mr. James Gaffrey. Gaffey. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. This isn't the first time we've seen this bill. It's come up in various forms in years past. Most of you have heard the same testimony over and over and over. This bill won't accomplish anything. The only person that can defend you and keep you safe and your families is you. The Supreme Court's already come to a decision years ago that the police have no obligation to defend you. This is settled law. So the only person that can defend you is you. And so you're going to restrict people's ability to defend themselves? That doesn't make sense. I mean, how many states do we have to look at that already restrict firearms in school zones and other places which keep having school shootings time after time after time? Police can't protect you. The laws that you guys pass can do nothing but punish people after the fact. This bill will accomplish nothing but make schools less safe. Period. End of discussion. It's proven in liberal state after liberal state. If gun control worked and keeping guns out of people's hands, then Chicago, New York, name a city would be like the safest places in the world. But instead, they're the most dangerous because nobody can defend themselves from bad people. So what are we going to accomplish by doing this? Nothing. The structure of the bill is terrible. We've beat this to death. And what disturbs me most is that the sponsors of the bill keep hearing the same stuff over and over, and we keep looking at the same bad results in states that have enacted stuff like this, and yet year after year after year, we get the same dumb idea presented to us. And I'm sorry to be offensive, but that's the fact. I want results. I don't want fluff, and this won't accomplish anything. Any questions? Oh, one other point. This bill in its structure doesn't accommodate, what if you have a situation where a parent is walking a child to school? There's no accommodation for that person to carry a firearm and take care of it. It's one thing if you have a car, but not everybody drives. There are lots of people that walk their kids to school. So the structure of this bill is terrible. The ideas behind it don't accomplish anything, and it's only going to make us less safe. Any questions?
Thank you for your testimony.
Have a good day. Thank you.
The chair calls Nancy Brennan.
Good morning. My name is Nancy Brennan. I'm from Ware, and I thank you for being here and for this long day ahead of you. I find it ironic and more than a little sad that in these weeks that we are discussing this bill, there are other bills being discussed that would supposedly keep our kids safe by not letting them read certain books, or keep our kids safe by not letting them use the bathroom. And yet this bill that deals with deadly consequences should have full support. Will this bill by itself save all our children? And will it make sure that we never have a school shooting? No, it will not. But this bill, along with some other very good legislation, such as a piece I heard, I think, yesterday on healthcare, mental health care for kids, along with some of the other bills you're going to hear today, would go a long way in making a huge difference. I grew up at a time when the hunters brought their guns. You could see them in the back of the trucks because it was hunting season. And I'm not even sure they locked their trucks. The world is very different. If you doubt it, go back and look at the speech last night and the angry, partisan way we treated each other. It is not the same world, and we need to do something. This is one little piece. I am a teacher, no longer, but once a teacher, always a teacher. And with all due respect to my former representative who said he had talked to dozens and dozens of teachers who want to carry guns, I too have talked to dozens and dozens of teachers here in New Hampshire and across this country when I was lucky enough to be New Hampshire's Teacher of the Year and travel and meet with other teachers. And everyone I talked to agreed, we are busy trying to teach the kids to read and write. We do not want to carry guns in our classrooms. I believe in the Second Amendment. I actually own a gun, and I'm a pretty good shot, but I would never have a gun in my classroom. And if you think it would make a difference, I'm sorry, you are terribly, terribly wrong. There was a story or a person who was interviewed when Gabby Giffords was shot, and he was a person, a civilian, that was allowed to carry a gun, and he was there, and he heard the gunshots, and he said, by the time I got my gun out and tried to figure out who was shooting who and who I should protect, it was over. If you've ever taught middle school, that's kind of what it feels like sometimes in a middle school classroom. I would urge you, pass this bill, pass these mental health bills, and let's begin to change the narrative. There is a poem called America is a Gun. A lot of you may have heard it, but it talks about every country. What are they known for? Wine, cheese, this, that. And every verse ends with, America is a gun. Let's change the narrative. Let's make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. The chair recognizes Brian Barry.
Good morning, citizens. Good morning, representatives. Thank you for taking time out of your day to be here. It's good to see our Republic in action. I'm happy. I just want to read briefly from the New Hampshire Constitution. Part first, Bill of Rights. Article 2A, bearing of arms. All persons have the right to keep and bear arms in defense of themselves, their families, their property, and the state. Their families, our families, New Hampshire families. Guns are not the answer to the world's problems, and I don't think anyone here, no matter what side you're on, believes that. However, there are well-documented instances where a firearm stops another bad person with ill intent who has a firearm or a knife. These have happened in churches, Walmarts, and even schools. Oftentimes, it's a school resource officer that would stop the assailant. Now, to the best of my recollection, we have not had a school shooting in New Hampshire, thank God Almighty. But criminals don't like challenges. And I'll draw my law enforcement and military experience to guarantee you that. That's why they give up when uniforms show up. As it was pointed out earlier, officers do not have a duty to protect you or your family, society in general. I love our law enforcement, and 98% of them will step in front of you or me and take a bullet in defense of us. Some won't, as evidenced in some of the school shootings that we've seen documented in videos. They sit there and wait. And that's unfortunate. Does that mean because I'm carrying a firearm in school legally that I'm going to be a hero? No. Does it mean it gives the kids and teachers and people in that school a fighting chance if I choose to engage that bad person? Yeah. Maybe I draw enough fire. Maybe I get killed. Maybe it gives the kids a chance to get out. Maybe I go down. Maybe I stop them. This bill, I believe, is well-intentioned. We want safe schools. I do believe that. I don't think anyone here is doing anything out of spite or not what they feel pure in their heart. But there is a reality here that evil exists. It does. Some people just want to see the world burn. I've seen it firsthand. There's many good people here today who have a belief different than mine that a firearm in school would save the lives of students and teachers, and I respect that. But I'll bet you a coffee from Aroma Joe's, if I was at their child's school and I took action, whether I fall or whether I make it, that they'd be happy someone did something that gave those kids and those teachers a chance to escape. We can look back to the 50s and 60s when there were shooting teams in schools, and we didn't have the problems we have now. Society has changed. We need to fix that. Mental health's a big deal, 100%. But this bill, ladies and gentlemen, respectfully, is not going to cure evil. It will not stop someone who has intent. I want you to think about that, please, when you cast your votes for this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. The chair calls Joanna Brown.
Thank you all. My name is Joanna Brown from Manchester, New Hampshire. I have to drop off my daughter at Manchester Central High School, which is one of the most highest crime-ridden communities. What's worse is that I have to park in the back lot in the dark, waiting for her to get home from the bus from sporting events. My heels lie. I am 5 feet tall. I cannot defend myself against any aggressor, not one. So if I decide to carry a firearm to protect myself and my daughters in the worst city in the state, you're taking away my right to defend myself and my daughters. You're attacking the wrong people. Criminals don't follow laws. They don't follow gun laws. They don't check what the rules are. They just do what they want to do and attack the people they want to attack when this urge strikes them. I don't know when that urge is going to be, but I can't protect myself and my daughters on the dark streets of Manchester. So I vehemently oppose this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Again, please refrain from clapping. The chair calls Marcel Du. I don't know. Doobie? Marcella? If everyone wonders why I'm struggling, I promise you I can read.
Hi, it's okay. It's Marcella Duby. Thank you. A nice French name. So my name is Marcella Duby. I am a resident of Amherst, New Hampshire. I am a volunteer member of Moms Demand Action. We are probably very well known in this room to many of you. We believe in responsible gun ownership and support gun owners' rights. But there are several instances where we need to have laws and guidelines to protect our children and to protect our society. There are many, many bills for lots of things. This is only one of many bills. It can't just be this one that protects the kids or protects our citizens. I am reading testimony on behalf of my dear friend Jean Alute. She is a school board member in the town of Amherst. Restoring gun-free school zones to our state is something that I feel passionate about. My experience as a school board member of the Souhegan High School in Amherst for 13 years was especially emboldening because, as you know, school board members are entrusted with maintaining a safe learning environment for the children and in their districts. In addition to being a board member, I was also on multiple security study committees over the years. After a year-long study, recommendations were made for how to improve security in our schools. And I'm going to take a moment and just mention that after many, many years, Souhegan finally got a buzz-in door at the front. For many years, you could just walk straight into the front. So that's also an important factor is security in our schools. Unfortunately, the state legislators' decision several years ago to allow people to carry guns into schools makes safety an almost insurmountable challenge. We would have to create a prison-like environment for our children in order to ensure that bad people with guns never entered our schools. This bill to restrict the possession of or discharge of a firearm in a safe school zone would go a long way toward protecting our children and school staff. Parents need to feel confident that they are sending their children to a safe place every day. A federal law on gun-free school zones is adhered to in a majority of the states in this country. I believe that we are one of 3 exceptions. I do hope that this committee will back HB32 and its common sense approach to protecting our public school students and staff from gun violence. Thank you, Jean Alute. Any questions?
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, this one, I'm going to ask you to come down and fill out the card. Somebody wrote Bear Arms. Well, that's great. I actually need your name, unless that is your name. Could you come forward, please, and fill out the card with your accurate name?
My name is Kang Lu.
Sir, could you?
Oh, you want me to write that?
Yes, please. It's for the record. Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, dear legislators. My name is Kang Lu.
Speaking to the mic.
My name is Kang Lu. I'm a New Hampshireite residing in Cheshire County. And I'm here to say that, just ask a few questions. Isn't it true that the proposed legislation would not apply to law enforcement officers carrying firearms in school zones during the performance of their duties? Of course it's true. It doesn't apply to police officers. And isn't it true that these police officers derive their power from our Constitution to protect us and to serve us? Specifically, Article 8 of our Constitution says all power residing originally in and being derived from the people, all the magistrates and officers of government are our substitutes and agents. Because those statements are true, then the intent and effect of this bill is unconstitutional on its face, since it would deprive the people of our original right and power to defend ourselves and our children. Worse still, and even more intolerable, is that the proponents of this bill are working to deprive us of these rights, knowing full well that the Supreme Court has concluded that as a matter of general law, the state does not have an affirmative obligation to protect an individual against private violence. See DeShaney versus Winnebago, 1989. This is a government of delegated powers, supreme within its prescribed sphere, but powerless outside of it. In this country, sovereignty resides in the people, and Congress and legislatures can exercise no power which they have not, by their Constitution, entrusted to it. All else is withheld. If the power is not in terms granted, it does not exist. See Juilliard versus Greenman, 1884, a Supreme Court decision. Thus, I conclude that for facial violations of Article 2 and Article 8 of our New Hampshire Constitution, the Second Amendment, and Article 4, Section 4 of the federal Constitution, this bill must fail. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. The chair calls Zandra Rice Hawkins.
Good morning. My name is Xandra Rice Hawkins. I'm the director of Gun Sense New Hampshire, a project of Granite State Progress, and the convener of the New Hampshire Gun Violence Prevention Coalition. We support this bill. The Federal Gun-Free Schools Act prohibits students from bringing firearms into schools, and the Gun-Free School Zone Act prohibits all other persons from bringing firearms within 1,000 feet of school property unless they are licensed by the state to carry a firearm. While federal law establishes gun-free school zones with qualifications, gaps in state law and statements from the Attorney General's office has left school districts and police departments in murky water on enforcement and jeopardizes safe spaces for our children to learn and grow. This is further complicated by House Bill 1178, which Governor Sununu signed into law last summer, that seeks to prevent local and state law enforcement and school officials from acting swiftly in response to the presence of firearms in our K-12 schools. A bill this afternoon seeks to further penalize state and local law enforcement and others for taking quick action to prevent gun violence. Federal and state laws ensuring that schools are gun-free zones have helped make K-12 schools even safer, significantly reducing gun violence in these places. The claim that gun-free zones invite mass shootings has been thoroughly debunked by research showing that the overwhelming majority, nearly 90%, of all high-fatality gun massacres since 1966 have occurred wholly or partly in locations where civilian guns were allowed or there was armed security or law enforcement present. In fact, unarmed school staff have stopped more active shooters than civilians armed with a gun, according to the FBI. An FBI study of 160 active shooter cases from 2000 to 2013 found that 21 incidents ended after unarmed citizens restrained the shooter. 11 of those involved unarmed principals, teachers, other school staff, and students who confronted and restrained the shooters. In only 5 of 160 instances did the shooting end after armed civilians exchanged gunfire with the shooters. Contrast those 5 cases with at least 20 reported incidents where the presence of firearms subjected students to more danger. This bill seeks to clarify that our elementary, middle, and high schools are gun-free. It is critical that this measure passes. If a student or adult brings a firearm into school in New Hampshire right now, local school districts and police departments face real challenges in how to appropriately deal with it in light of the major gaps in state law. The vast majority of states, 47 of them, and the District of Columbia prohibit carrying or possessing a firearm on K-12 school property or events. Only Hawaii, New Hampshire, and Wyoming do not. This problem will only grow worse as time passes, and especially now that more people realize how loose the gun laws are in New Hampshire. In fact, in the past, some gun groups have even hosted seminars encouraging people to carry firearms in our schools. This includes our classrooms, elementary school recitals, high school football games, you name it. Right now, someone could bring a gun into a school, and unless they issue threats or start shooting students, school and local law enforcement are essentially being told to stand down. In fact, some have been told to contact a regional ATF agent instead of taking immediate action. This means that schools are forced to monitor the situation, directing school personnel and resources away from the primary job of teaching our children. If the person carrying the gun does indeed do harm and start shooting, there will be a lot of second guessing as to what should have been done from the start. This is a major liability and public relations crisis for our schools at best, and we all know what a worst case scenario means. Let's skip the second guessing and empower our local school districts and police departments to take action from the start. Without this bill, they won't have all the options they can rely on to help deter a dangerous situation before it becomes a deadly one. Guns do not belong in our schools. We urge the committee to vote House Bill 32 ought to pass to protect our students, our educators, and our learning environments. Thank you, and I'm happy to take questions.
Representative Breed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you just give me the source of the data for the safety
of the school-free zones?
Yep, Daniel Webster, Firearms and College Campuses, Research, Evidence, and Policy Implications, a study of active shooter incidents in the United States between 2000 2013 from the FBI, and the Giffords Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence has a comprehensive overview of firearms laws at state and federal level. I will send this by email with the hyperlink.
Thank you.
But I'd set it out loud for anybody else interested. Thank you very much for the question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
The chair calls Penny Dean, and it appears our microphone situation has improved, so now you can stand at a reasonable distance from the microphone.
I'm not sure what reasonable distance is, but I guess this is it. My name is Penny Dean. I'm from Concord. I'm a private attorney in private practice. And my mother always told me you only have one time to make a good first impression. And I would ask that you ITL this bill. We can start from the beginning where it's a train wreck. Whoever wrote it didn't bother to proofread or even look at what they were saying. Because if you look at page 1, line 5, they reference RSA 189, 13A, Roman 5. And it says specifically, any of the offenses enumerated in that statute. Well, that statute is actually a provision about checking the criminal records for volunteers. So my basic premise is when you start going through this and you look at it, it's gobbledygook that doesn't make sense. Because I look at things like a mechanic. How do you actually do these things? This doesn't work. You had one speaker say this bill would go a long way. And I agree, it would go a really long way and make a difference, a bad difference. And we're looking at death by 1,000 cuts when it comes to people who hate guns. They don't think guns belong anywhere. And they don't like people that carry guns, and they always want a reason that you shouldn't have guns. When you look at this bill, and again, we look back at practicality, even if you wanted to enforce this bill, if you look at page 1, line 19, they talk about the grounds of a school zone. I defy any of you, including the facilities manager for Concord Schools, to show me the property lines of all the Concord property that the schools use. I bet they can't. I know they can't. I can tell you that my property, my back property, backs up with the Kristen McCullough School. And they had some trees years ago that grew over my property. And so I was willing to pay for tree cutters because I wanted the branches gone. It took me hours and hours and days to get to the facilities manager, who gave me permission. He said, hey, if you're paying, bring in your people and cut away. But the gist of it is, how are we going to find out who's in charge to get permission to do these things? This was talking about a tree, cutting a couple branches from a tree. And you're asking for permission to carry guns through there for shooting, for hunting, for whatever. Hunting season will be over 5 years from now before you get to the right person. And then you ask with those who are politically, what I call incorrect, they're going to say, well, why can't they walk around this way? Why do they got to walk over the school property with our gun? And what gun are they going to carry? And when are they going to be there? No. As a practical matter, if this passes, there won't be any people walking across the back of school property. But more importantly, you're going to have people getting arrested. This is one of these bills, I call it make work bill for lawyers. And I already got plenty of work. I don't need more work. I'm very grateful for that. But what you're talking about here is innocent people getting ensnared, not knowing where the boundaries are. And I guess we talk about people carrying firearms in school zones. What's the problem? We haven't had a problem in New Hampshire in decades with with those issues. So just because someone doesn't like firearms, just because someone's carrying a firearm doesn't mean they're going to do anything illegal. And they talk about monitoring the situation. Why are you monitoring any situation? They're not bothering anybody. You need to leave them alone. The other thing, when you go to page 2 of the bill, and again, we go back to look at page lines 19, 20, 21, 22, we go back to about authorized by school authorities. Does that mean the facilities manager? Does that mean the principal of the school where it's located? Does that mean the school superintendent? Who does that mean? So even again, if I thought I were ever so lucky to get the permission of any one of these, any more anti-gun people, do you honestly think, and then we get this, what I call turf war. The principal gives me permission and the school superintendent says, he wasn't authorized to give you that permission. So you're looking to set people up to fail. You're looking to set up innocent gun owners to fail. But the bottom substantive thing that you should ask yourself, beyond the horrible mechanics of this, someone who drafted this was not a litigator or a lawyer, I can tell you that, is that do we need this? And the answer is we absolutely don't need it. And it's abysmal, and it's really offensive to the Constitution. It's really offensive. You look at people like this and you say, what are you trying to do here? We've had enough instances in this country going back that when people have had firearms in school zones, lawful people, they've been able to stop things. They've been able to stop carnage. So I respectfully say that this bill is a horrible piece of drafting, a horrible piece of legislation. It's not mechanical.